The rebellious teenage years can make a young person feel invincible. While they don't realize it yet, adults, particularly ones with bad intentions, are fully aware of this and often take advantage. Whether it's at a mall, school, county fair, and everything in between really, the teens are always targets. Here are 5 missing teen unsolved mysteries. Number 5. Susan and Stacy. Susan Smalley and Stacy Madison were best friends and basically inseparable. Both 18 years old, they were close to the end of their senior year at Newman Smith High School in Coralton, Texas, which sits about 20 miles north of Dallas. And so it was an exciting time in their lives, and both had plans for the future that included attending college, among other things. But unfortunately, they never even got the chance to reach the end of the school year, walk down that aisle and get their diplomas. And to this very day, there's only speculation as to what exactly went wrong. On Saturday, March 19th of 1988, Susan and Stacy had spent most of their day at the mall, something they did pretty often because it was the late 80s. And after that, they went back to Susan's house, made some phone calls with friends, and prepped for a night out. And Stacy got to borrow her mother's yellow '67 Mustang, a car that would go on to become one of the only clues in this entire case. At around midnight, the two friends were last seen heading out, reportedly with plans to meet up with some boys. And they weren't going to a specific party or place, just driving around as teens do. But somewhere along the way, something went horribly wrong. And that yellow Mustang was found 2 days later, abandoned in a Dallas shopping center parking lot. Inside the car, there were no signs of a struggle or obvious clues as to what might have happened. Just a pair of Susan's shoes and Stacy's purse. It was as if they had simply vanished up into thin air. The search for the two friends started immediately, led in part by severely distraught family members and friends. And posters with the two teens' faces were plastered all across Texas. News reports called for anybody with information to step forward.
Flyers have been scattered all over Carrollton and beyond. No helpful information has surfaced.
Meanwhile, police investigated countless leads, but really, the trail never even got warm. No witnesses came forward, and the leads were really all just people speculating on who could have been responsible. No actual suspicious individuals were ever identified, so it was hard to reconcile what had actually truly happened. As a result, the police circulated various theories. Everything from the girls possibly having chosen to run away, to of course a kidnapping and maybe worse. Susan and Stacy weren't the kind to run away, and there was no evidence to suggest the boys they were going to meet up with had anything to do with this. Had it been a stranger they encountered, surely there would have been some sign of a struggle in that car. Since everything was in its right place, it suggested that perhaps they did know their attacker. The last time the girls were seen that night was when they stopped by the Steak and Ale, where Smalley had been a waitress. They talked with some of the workers, but that was really it. A previous boyfriend of Smalley's, many months after the disappearance, would go on to tell a girl he was trying to date that he had actually murdered the two girls and then dumped them in a local cemetery. And this girl then told the police that, and the young man was brought in. He went on to pass a polygraph and claimed he was just trying to act cool. And furthermore, no bodies ever showed up in any cemeteries.
Are you prepared to get the news that they found your daughter's remains?
I know in my heart that my daughter is no longer alive, or she would have been home.
And so that's really where this story wraps up. And it's been 36 years and counting, with no sign of them showing up, no closure in the case or for the families. Number 4. The mystery haunting North Carolina. Melina Kojikari was just 11 years old when she vanished without a trace. And the mystery surrounding her disappearance has left a dark cloud over the town of Cornelius, North Carolina ever since. Because what makes this case particularly disturbing isn't just the fact that Melina disappeared. It's how long it took before anyone even realized she was gone. It was December 15th, 2022, when Madalina's mother, Diana, got a knock on her door. When she answered it, standing in front of her were officials from the middle school her daughter attended. They asked if everything was okay, and were wondering why Madalina hadn't been to class since Thanksgiving. Diana fumbled her words a bit, but ultimately said she didn't know where her little girl was, and that Madalina had been missing for the past 22 days. She didn't tell the school and didn't alert the authorities. By the time all this was getting out, any immediate leads or opportunities to find her were certainly lost, which most likely was the point. According to Diana, the last time she had seen her daughter was on November 23rd, after she had put her to bed. She had no idea where she went and claimed she hadn't reported her missing because she feared of a conflict with her husband, Christopher Palmeter. And Christopher was the stepfather to Madalina, so must have been a pretty big conflict she was worried about there. To not tell anyone of your missing daughter, well, that means you were either involved or covering up for somebody. Clearly, the family dynamics were broken here. A lack of straightforward answers proved just that. As the investigation deepened, surveillance footage from the girl's school bus was obtained from November 21st, showing her get off the bus. But other than that, searching ring cams and other surveillance in the area didn't show the little girl anywhere. Diana and Christopher were arrested for failing to report a missing child, but no sign of the kid was ever found. So there's not a whole lot more that can be done at the moment. And both Diana and Christopher spent some time in jail for not reporting her, but that's as far as this has gone.
Her grandmother is claiming that you sold Madalina. What do you have to say about that?
Diana ended up spending 520 days in jail and was then released. And while she is still a suspect in the overall case, there's no active warrant for her arrest. Because of that, she was able to leave the country. Diana has since headed back to her native land of Moldova. It looks like instead of having an interest in finding her little girl, she's more interested in removing herself from the entire situation and even moving on, possibly. She's recently posted on Facebook some pictures of herself in Romania, in front of lakes and holding a sunflower to her face, always with a smile as if the 37-year-old is just living her best life. Well, you go, girl. And who knows where she'll go next. There's a few options out there where she could evade justice forever if needed. And the police in North Carolina promise this case will not go cold and that they are doing everything they can to solve it. And hopefully they can put in some overtime and get the job done. Because justice in this case needs to be served before it's too late.
Today is Madalina's 12th birthday. The reason we're here today is not to celebrate her birthday, but to honor her and continue to ask the public for help in locating her.
Number 3, the Vanishing at the county fair. What happened to 14-year-old Jeremy Bright is a sort of classic case of something so big happening in a small town that no one knows how to handle it. Most people want to help, and some want to keep things hidden, and so, as a result, you have a lot of speculations and rumors floating about. But none of them led to Jeremy, and so, to this day, his case remains one of Oregon's most enduring mysteries. August 13th of 1986, the Coos County Fair in Myrtle Point, Oregon was in full swing, and it was something that Jeremy had been excited about for weeks. He was spending that weekend at his stepfather's house. And Jeremy, his mom, and 10-year-old sister Stay lived a few hours away primarily, but his mom had to work, and so he was off to the fair. And that day, he hit it up with his friend Johnny, where the two had a good old time. And that night, Jeremy stopped by the tavern that his grandmother owned to see his stepdad to get some cash to go to the fair again the next day. That's exactly what he did. And so far, no problems. But the following day, he took his sister there, and the two split up for most of the time. He planned to meet back up in the afternoon under the Ferris wheel, but Jeremy never showed.
The last time I saw him was when we went to get our bracelets. He didn't wait for us to get them. We went over and got him, and he was gone when we went back over.
This was back in the 80s, so kids were a little bit freer to do what they wanted, and you couldn't just call them on a cell phone to see where they were. So it took another day, August 15th, for him to be reported missing. And that day his mom had come to get the kids, and that's when everyone realized Jeremy was nowhere in sight. As the fair packed up, news of Jeremy's disappearance flared up and people got to talking. Several witnesses came forward saying they saw the boy struggling with a man at the fair who was taking him away. The problem was none of these sightings could be confirmed. The details of each account a little murky. In the following days, reported sightings of Jeremy flooded the police station. And even though they all led to dead ends, it seemed the kid was at least alive. And finding out how much he liked attending the fair, authorities started to think that maybe he packed up with them to travel to the next town. His case now looking like he was a runaway rather than having been kidnapped. The reality is, though, this kid didn't run away with any carnies, and some people out there knew more than they were letting on. Little by little, as details came out, like a game of telephone, stories started to morph. And there were talks about Jeremy going to a party that night and being given a beer laced with some drugs. The guys that gave him the beer thought it would be funny, but Jeremy, who had a heart murmur, ended up overdosing instead. And faced with the reality that they were looking at serious prison time, the guys instead chose to bury the body. Another story claimed Jeremy had gotten into an altercation with someone much older, possibly more dangerous, at a swimming hole along the Quaquil River. And they shot him and then got rid of the body. An alternate to that story was that Jeremy was accidentally hit by a bullet while he and some guys were doing target practice in the woods. In a remote cabin, these guys tried to save him, but it was too late. Supposedly, they buried him in a shallow grave out there. Police scoured the woods, but never found anything. There were also rumors that he was in a well in town, dumped there for reasons unknown. All the wells were searched, and they once again came up empty-handed. The interesting thing with rumors is that there's often a shred of truth in them somewhere. When a kid like Jeremy goes missing, it would be a bit odd for all these stories to pop up out of nowhere, without them originating from something real. A group of guys, an accident, followed by a cover-up, could have certainly happened. Whether or not all the rumors were started in order to muddy the waters and make the truth harder to find, or they were genuinely people trying to piece together bits and pieces of what they heard, we'll likely never know.
Reappearing in all the rumors and all of the reports that as long as these men are out on the street, they can hurt somebody else's child the same as they hurt mine.
Number 2, Olivia Kale. When 19-year-old Olivia Kale left her brother's home in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, she unknowingly embarked on a journey that would lead to her mysterious disappearance, one that still remains unsolved to this day. She had been in a good mood on the day it all went down, March 4th of 2011. She spent some time shopping for clothes near her brother Lance's place because later that day she was headed back to Miami, Florida with her boyfriend, 22-year-old Alexander Lorenzi. She spoke excitedly about the trip, noting that Alex was being nice and paying for everything. It was a last-minute adventure, maybe one she could use as the previous year had been challenging for Olivia. Her father's death at just 56 years old was an emotional blow, and on top of that, her 3-year relationship with her longtime boyfriend, Zach, had ended, leaving her feeling like she was losing everybody important in her life. But despite all this, Olivia seemed to be bouncing back. And she had recently moved into an apartment with her best friend and started dating Alexander. And maybe a few more days in the sun would be good for her. However, when Olivia's mother, Christine, found out about the impromptu trip, she was caught off guard a bit. You see, Olivia and Alex had literally just returned from Miami the day before. Now they were headed back just like that, and that didn't sit right with Christine. And she called her daughter, hoping to convince her to stay, but Olivia never picked up. And after Olivia had arrived safely in Miami the first time, she called Lance immediately. He expected a similar call on this second trip, but this time there was nothing. After that, day after day, her friends and family reached out, but every single call went straight to voicemail. Something wasn't right. And 2 weeks passed with still no word, and their unease turned into dread when Olivia's phone was disconnected completely for non-payment on March 19th. And this was the last straw, and her family contacted the Allegheny County Police to report the girl missing. Alexander, meanwhile, had returned to Pennsylvania on March 16th, but Olivia wasn't with him. He then told conflicting stories, one that she had stayed in Florida, and another that he had dropped her off at her Mount Washington apartment in Pennsylvania. He refused to speak to Olivia's family, ignored the police inquiries, and even disconnected his phone at one point to avoid contact. Christine was sure that Alexander knew what had happened to her daughter, but he stayed tight-lipped, even when detectives tried to question him. His lawyer made it clear Alexander had nothing to say.
And police had a lot of questions for her boyfriend, but that didn't go well.
He never answers any of our questions. However, people have told us when he comes back, Olivia's not with him.
The investigation hit wall after wall. Authorities couldn't determine if Olivia had even made it to Florida. They searched hospitals and jails, scoured databases, and alerted law enforcement up and down the East Coast, but the young woman seemed to have vanished without a trace. And then on March 30th, Alexander was arrested after police found guns, drugs, and stolen property during a search of his place. And now, maybe under pressure, he would reveal what he knew about Olivia. But, as it turns out, he still remained silent. Further searches uncovered some strange evidence: shell casings, a pink tote bag belonging to Olivia, and a blood-stained sheet found in Alexander's garage. A pickup truck associated with Alexander's father's company contained more shell casings, a jewelry box, and a plane ticket to Fort Myers. And still, none of this evidence pointed definitively to Olivia's fate. The evidence was mounting, but Alexander continued to avoid cooperating. Then in August of 2011, police arrested him again after he assaulted an officer during a search related to another incident. A year after Olivia vanished, her family held a candlelit vigil, and they clung to hope that somewhere she was still alive. And Jeannie, Alexander's mother, showed up that night, not to join the vigil, but to speak to the media. And she insisted that her son had nothing to do with the girl's disappearance, angrily decrying how his name was repeatedly linked to the case.
When your son is found guilty in any source that I believe that he has done something harm to my daughter, I will be there as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, same to you.
But to Olivia's family, Jeannie's sudden appearance seemed like another tactic to protect her son, rather than to actually help them find their missing loved one. By 2013, investigators publicly considered the possibility that Olivia had been a victim of human trafficking. It was a heartbreaking theory, though it offered hope that she could still be alive. In the years since, Olivia's case has grown colder, but her family refuses to give up. As Christine puts it, they had to learn to live without answers, but they will never stop asking the questions that matter. Number 1. Haunted Halloween. Halloween of 1969 is a day the good townsfolk of Oscoda, Michigan still talk about to this day. Because the usually entertaining holiday when people get to dress up and pretend to be something they aren't, on that evening took a very real and dark turn. That day, 16-year-old Patty Spencer and 15-year-old Pamela Honley found themselves in a mischievous spirit. The two weren't really friends, didn't particularly run in the same circle, but they were friendly enough to decide to skip school together, looking to get into anything but their books. So they walked down the hallway and out the front door, and after that, well, nobody knows. But they would end up disappearing off the face of the earth. Pamela was known to have a bit of a rebellious spirit, so pretty quickly, the police figured they likely ran away, possibly to the city of Flint, and most likely would return in the days that followed. But they still haven't come back, and it's been over 55 years. So what happened? Their families were adamant from the start. These girls didn't run away. For starters, the girls were both very close with their families. Their homes were nearby to the school, and yet they hadn't stopped in to take any belongings or their purses with money or clothes to cover them for a few days. On top of that, they were planning on attending some Halloween festivities that evening, something they were both looking forward to. In short, this wasn't the behavior of girls who intended to vanish willingly. The deeper investigators looked, the more sinister the disappearance seemed. Witnesses claimed they saw Patricia and Pamela walking away from Oscoda High School. A man said that he picked them up along River Road, dropping them off in the downtown area. Clearly, they had no problem grabbing a ride from strangers, so what's to say a bad man with sinister intentions didn't see the two essentially children walking alone and decided to take advantage? Come 1985, rumors of a gruesome end emerged. They began to get traction, saying that Patty and Pamela had been murdered by two area men and buried near a barn where teenagers often gathered to party. It was enough of a lead for police to investigate, yet when they searched the area decades later with cadaver dogs, they found nothing. There were other strange accounts in this case, like that of the man who claimed to have dropped them off at a gas station downtown. And he swore he had been questioned before, though there was no record of his statement in the investigation files. Details like these are what get people questioning what really went down. Important moments that just slipped through the cracks so easily. It was somebody, perhaps even a police officer, trying to cover up something. Pamela's sister Mary has been a vocal advocate, speaking out about her sister's case at events like Missing in Michigan, hoping to keep their memories alive and perhaps one day find some closure.
I want to solve it for my mom, and to solve it for Pam too. She, let her know that we didn't give up.
Both girls' profiles have been entered into national databases, and age progression images have been circulated, showing what they might look like today had they lived to see their 50s and 60s. But the sad truth is that after all these years, Patty and Pamela are still missing. They are two of many cases in the U.S. that do not have any closure, which is a heavy load to carry for the surviving family members. Wondering daily what exactly happened, the possibilities are numerous. And at the end of each one is no happy ending, just a thought they want to remove from their mind but never can. So there were 5 missing teen unsolved mysteries. And check out some of these other videos we think you'll like, and remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss out on all the new content we're putting out each week. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'll see you guys over in the next one.